The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. I still remember because I was eating cereal, scrolling through college acceptance letters, when my mom walked in with this thick manila envelope from the bank. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a statement showing my college fund balance, $0.00. 8 years of birthday money, Christmas gifts, summer job savings, and the life insurance money from when my dad died when I was 12. Gone. All of it. $57,000 that was supposed to change my life vanished like it never existed. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. I called the bank immediately. The woman on the phone spoke in that careful, professional tone that meant bad news. The account was closed by the secondary holder, Mr. Richard Matthews. The funds were transferred to his personal account 3 weeks ago. Uncle Rick, my dad's older brother, the man who hugged me at the funeral and promised he'd take care of me. The man my mom trusted to co-sign the account because she didn't understand banking and investments. I hung up and stared at the empty cereal bowl. 3 weeks ago, right around the time my cousin Derek posted those photos on Instagram, posing with his brand new BMW, the same. Derek, who spent high school making fun of my hand-me-down clothes and calling me charity case behind my back. My mom found me sitting there an hour later, still holding the bank statement. When I told her what happened, she went white. She called Uncle Rick immediately, putting him on speakerphone. "Rick, what happened to Emma's college fund?" There was a pause, then that familiar laugh he always did when he was about to lie. "What college fund? Oh, you mean that little account." "Emma, honey, that money was always meant for the family. Your dad would have wanted us to use it where it was needed most." "Needed most?" I said, my voice barely a whisper. Derek needed a BMW more than I needed college? Derek's going to stay on his sports scholarship. He needed reliable transportation. "You're smart, Emma. You'll figure something out. Take out loans like everyone else." My mom was crying now. Rick, that was her father's money. He saved every penny for her education. And I invested it in the family's future. Derek's going to be somebody. He's going to make us all proud. The line went dead. I sat there listening to the dial tone, understanding for the first time that I was completely alone in this world. My own family had robbed me blind and felt good about it. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to community college on student loans, and I was going to use those 2 years to learn everything I could about my Uncle S business. Because Uncle Rick owned 3 successful auto repair shops in town, and he built his reputation on being trustworthy and honest. I wondered what his customers would think if they knew the truth about his character. The next morning, I enrolled in community college and signed up for business classes: accounting, finance, marketing, and legal studies. I also got a job at the coffee shop across the street from Uncle Rick's main auto shop. Not because I needed the money, though I did, but because I needed information. For 6 months, I served coffee to his customers, his employees, his suppliers. I listened to every conversation, learned every name, memorized every complaint. Uncle Rick's business wasn't as solid as it looked. He cut corners on parts, overcharged elderly customers, and had a habit of finding expensive problems that didn't actually exist. But the real goldmine was his bookkeeper, Janet. She came in every Wednesday for a large coffee and a blueberry muffin, and she hated Uncle Rick. Apparently, he promised her a raise 2 years ago and never delivered. She also mentioned, quite loudly, that she was planning to retire soon and didn't care what happened to the business after she left. I started bringing Janet an extra muffin on the house. We became friendly. She told me about her grandchildren, her garden, her plans for retirement. And sometimes, when she was feeling particularly frustrated with Uncle Rick, she'd mention things. Little things, like how he paid certain suppliers in cash to avoid taxes, how he had a separate set of books for his special customers, how he'd been skimming money from the business account to pay for Derek's college expenses. After a year, I transferred to the state university with a partial scholarship I'd earned through my perfect GPA. I was studying business administration with a minor in forensic accounting. Uncle Rick actually congratulated me at a family barbecue, patting my shoulder and saying how proud he was that I made something of myself despite the setbacks. Derek was there too, complaining about his professors and showing off his new designer watch. He'd gained 30 pounds and lost his athletic scholarship, but Uncle Rick was still funding his lifestyle. When someone asked how Derek was paying for school, Uncle Rick just winked and said, "Family takes care of family." I smiled and nodded and took mental notes. By my junior year, I'd learned enough about business law and accounting to understand exactly what Uncle Rick was doing wrong. The cash payments, the double books, the personal expenses run through the business, it was all illegal, and it was all documented if you knew where to look. I also learned something else. Uncle Rick had been planning to expand his business. He'd been talking to investors about opening 2 more locations, maybe even franchising. His reputation was everything to him. He'd spent 20 years building his image as the most honest mechanic in town. That's when I knew how to destroy him. I started slowly. First, I created fake social media accounts and began leaving negative reviews on his business pages. Nothing too obvious, just complaints about overcharging and unnecessary repairs. I made sure to use details I'd learned from listening to his actual customers complain. Then I started reaching out to his former customers, the ones who'd been dissatisfied but never complained publicly. I told them I was a journalism student working on a story about consumer protection, and would they be willing to share their experiences with local auto repair shops? The stories poured in. Elderly customers charged for new engines when they only needed oil changes. Single mothers talked into expensive repairs they couldn't afford. Young drivers sold unnecessary parts and inflated prices. I documented everything: names, dates, amounts, repair orders. I cross-referenced it all with the business records I'd memorized from Janet's complaints. A pattern emerged that showed systematic fraud going back years. But I still wasn't ready to strike. I needed one more piece of the puzzle. Janet retired at the end of my junior year. Uncle Rick hired a new bookkeeper, but there was a gap of about 2 weeks where he had to handle the books himself. That's when I struck up a friendship with Marcus, one of his mechanics. Marcus was young, honest, and increasingly uncomfortable with what he was being asked to do. He decomplained to customers at the coffee shop about having to install cheap parts while charging premium prices, or being told to find problems with cars that were running fine. I started buying Marcus coffee, listening to his complaints, and eventually suggesting he might want to document things just to protect himself. I helped him understand that if the business ever got investigated, the employees who could prove they were just following orders would be protected. Marcus started taking photos of repair orders, saving text messages, keeping records of everything Uncle Rick told him to do. He didn't know he was helping me build a case. He thought he was just protecting himself. Everything changed the week before my college graduation. Derek had finally flunked out of state and moved back home. Uncle Rick was furious about the wasted money and started taking it out on his employees. He fired 2 mechanics for attitude problems and docked Marcus's pay for working too slow. That's when Marcus came to me with a manila envelope full of evidence. "I can't do this anymore," he said. "But I can't afford to just quit. I need this job." I looked through the photos, the text messages, the repair orders. It was everything I needed to prove that Uncle Rick had been defrauding customers for years. But more importantly, it was everything I needed to prove that he'd been stealing from his own business to fund Derek's lifestyle. "You won't need to quit," I told Marcus. "Just wait a few more weeks." The Monday after graduation, I walked into the office of the district attorney. I'd done my research. I knew exactly which prosecutor handled white-collar crime, and I knew they'd been looking for high-profile cases to build their reputation. I presented them with 3 years of documented evidence: customer complaints, business records, employee testimony, and financial records showing personal expenses paid with business funds. I also gave them Derek's social media posts showing a lifestyle that didn't match his reported income. "This is very thorough," the prosecutor said, flipping through the files. "How did you gather all this?" "Uncle Rick stole my college fund to buy his son a car," I said. "I spent 3 years learning how to prove he's been stealing from everyone else too." The investigation took 6 months. During that time, I got a job at a competing auto repair shop across town. I watched Uncle Rick's business slowly fall apart as word spread about the investigation. Customers started taking their cars elsewhere. His best employees quit. His suppliers demanded cash up front. Uncle Rick tried calling me once, about 3 months into the investigation. He'd heard I was working at a competitor and wanted to offer me a job. Family should stick together, he said. Especially now when times are tough. I almost laughed. You mean now that you're under investigation for fraud? That's all a misunderstanding. Some disgruntled customers making up stories. You know how it is. Actually, I don't know how it is, I said. See, I've never stolen money from family members or defrauded customers, so I wouldn't know how that feels. He hung up without another word. The arrest came on a Thursday morning. Uncle Rick was charged with fraud, tax evasion, and theft. Derek was charged as an accessory since he knowingly benefited from the stolen money. The local news ran the story with the headline, "Trusted Mechanic Accused of Systematic Customer Fraud." I watched the coverage from my apartment, eating cereal from the same bowl I'd used the day I found out my college fund was gone. The news showed Uncle Rick being led away in handcuffs, his 3 auto shops closed with police tape across the doors. The reporter interviewed several customers who'd been overcharged. One elderly woman said she'd paid $3,000 for a transmission repair that turned out to be unnecessary. A single mother said she'd been charged for parts that were never actually installed. At the end of the segment, the reporter mentioned that the investigation had been launched based on a tip from a family member who'd been personally victimized by the accused. My phone started ringing immediately. First my mom, then various aunts and uncles, then neighbors who'd seen the news. Everyone wanted to know if I was the one who turned in Uncle Rick. I let them all go to voicemail. I have nothing to say to any of them. The trial took place 8 months later. I testified about the stolen college fund, presenting bank records and documentation of Derek's purchases. The prosecutor used my testimony to establish a pattern of theft and abuse of trust. Other witnesses testified about fraudulent repairs, overcharging, and intimidation. Marcus took the stand and described being ordered to install cheap parts while charging premium prices. Janet, the former bookkeeper, testified about the double books and cash payments. Uncle Rick's defense was that he'd made some mistakes, but never intended to hurt anyone. He claimed Derek's car was a loan, not a gift, and that he'd always planned to pay back the college fund. The jury deliberated for 3 hours, guilty on all counts. Uncle Rick was sentenced to 4 years in prison and ordered to pay restitution to all the customers he defrauded. The total amount came to over $200,000. Derek received 2 years probation and was ordered to return the BMW. I was awarded full restitution for my college fund, plus interest. $57,000 became $83,000. More than enough to pay off my student loans and start building my own future, but the money wasn't the real victory. The real victory was watching Uncle Rick's reputation crumble. The man who spent 20 years building his image as trustworthy and honest was now known throughout town as a fraud and a thief. 6 months after the trial, I opened my own business. Not an auto repair shop, but a consumer protection consultancy. I help people who've been defrauded by businesses, and I specialize in cases involving family members who abuse positions of trust. My first client was Marcus, the mechanic who'd helped me gather evidence. He'd been blacklisted by other auto shops in town after testifying against Uncle Rick. I helped him document the retaliation and file a complaint with the labor board. Now he works for me, investigating suspicious business practices. My second client was Janet, the former bookkeeper. She'd been denied her pension after Uncle Rick's business collapsed. I helped her file a lawsuit and recover everything she was owed. Business is good. It turns out there are a lot of people who've been betrayed by family members they trusted. And there are a lot of businesses that think they can get away with fraud because their victims won't fight back. They're wrong about that. Last month, I drove past the spot where Uncle Rick's main auto shop used to be. It's a coffee shop now, owned by a young couple who moved here from out of state. They have no idea what used to happen in that building. I stopped in for coffee and introduced myself to the owners. They were excited to meet someone who'd grown up in the neighborhood. They asked if I knew anything about the history of the building. It used to be an auto repair shop, I told them. But the owner wasn't very honest. He hurt a lot of people before he was finally caught. Well, the woman said, I'm glad you're here now. This neighborhood needs more trustworthy businesses. I smiled and agreed. It does need more trustworthy businesses, and fewer family members who think they can steal from the people who trust them most. Uncle Rick gets out of prison next year. Derek moved to another state and works at a call center. My mom still asks me if I think I went too far, turning in my own family. I always give her the same answer. He stopped being family the day he stole my future. I was just returning the favor. The coffee shop owners gave me a loyalty card. 10 purchases, and the 11th is free. It's a small thing, but it made me smile. Because it's exactly the kind of honest business practice that Uncle Rick never understood. Some people build their success by tearing others down. But the best revenge isn't just destroying someone who wronged you. It's building something better in the space they used to occupy. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.